Today we're going to talk about some e-commerce news, and then what I am super excited about is discussing some of the problems that we have been solving recently. And I hope to make this, we're going to be making this a regular part of our conversation. And the cool thing is, to facilitate that, I am joined by none other than my brother. His name is Jesse. Jesse,
hey guys.
welcome.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah,
I'm super excited about this.
I would have said he is a guest on the podcast, but two things. First, he's going to be a regular fixture of the podcast, and number two, I've kind of known him for a while, so he kind of has lost that guest status. But
we go back a long way.
Yeah, and we've been working together for I don't know how many years now. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been great though. It's been fun.
Yeah, and the good news is we don't fight almost ever, so our chemistry is really good. That said, we are going to be talking about some fights today, and it's not necessarily fights with each other. It's fights with code, and it's really important that we have solid understanding of how to get these fights resolved. Before we do that, though, I think we need to dive in and talk about some news. We are recording this on April 21st of 2021, and if you would have said this 21 days ago, I would have said this is a bit of an April Fool's joke, but it's not. It was 3 weeks after that, so I think we're well clear of April Fool's jokes. And it's kind of some big news.
Yeah,
Jesse.
no kidding. It's huge.
You want to spill the beans?
Oh, sure. Magento's going away. At least the name, that is.
Yep.
It's to be no more.
Yeah, it's going, which is kind of hard to imagine because I've used it. I've used that word. It's been a daily part of my vocabulary for 10 years.
Yeah. And in my perspective, it's almost like a fixture of the web. And I recognize that Magento's a lot smaller than like WordPress or something like that. But it's so strange to think like, what would happen if WordPress changed its name or something like that? Like that'd be huge. And it's kind of like, well, Magento's doing that. And I can understand why. But
after
it's
paying
a big thing.
$1.5 billion, almost $2 billion. I mean, that's more zeros than I have a hard time imagining. You can do whatever you want with a product. And that's the big point, is that, they can do whatever they want with this product. Yeah, like the ramifications are pretty significant. So it's not going to be called Magento anymore. Like it's going to be called, and I don't know if we said this yet, Adobe Commerce, which honestly the name matches Adobe, but it's not necessarily. I guess it's Commerce. Maybe is the name, right? Because if you take out the branding off of that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, what are they going to do with the open source? You're going to have Adobe Commerce and Adobe Commerce open source. How's this going to work? And then how are we going to refer to it? Like, is it Adobe Commerce, like one word for the namespace, or is it going to be something else?
Well, that was a funny point you brought up there. So if it's Adobe Commerce is the product, like if that replaces Magento, we call it Magento Open Source and Magento Commerce. So it'd be like Adobe Commerce.
Hey, there you go. We just do that. Adobe Commerce or Adobe Commerce Open Source.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm guessing their marketing teams will have something better than that. But
yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Well, and obviously it's people's greatest fears that open source goes away. I don't think it'll ever go away. But I know stuff changing and all that stuff. But yeah, again, are they going to change? That's the big question, I guess. Are they going to change the Magento namespace in the code? And my prediction is no, because that would effectively break every single Living Daylights module out on the market anywhere that's ever been written.
Yeah, that'd be huge. And as a developer, that's kind of where my mind goes. Like, what are they going to do with the code?
Yep.
How are they going to work that?
Yeah, that'd be I'd say a bit of a disaster. That would be a landslide of a disaster. Yeah, that would be interesting. So we'll just see how that plays out. And again, I don't fault Adobe at all for doing that, because it's their product. For crying out loud, it's their product. So they paid the money for it. They can do whatever they want with it. So anyways,
absolutely,
that's the news of the day. We'll just see how the community reacts to it. I know VNI Cop, he had a great comment. I don't know if you saw this, but he said, well, what's going to happen? Is the Magento name up for grabs now? Is the Magento namespace up for grabs? Like, what about the Twitter handle? So that was a great comment, because
yeah, there'd probably be some people that would be interested in obtaining that.
Shopware, anyone? Yeah. We'll see on that one. That's good. But anyways, this next section that I want to talk about, and it's going to be a big highlight of every one of our episodes for this podcast, is the fact that as an agency, we're building sites all day, every day, literally. The training stuff, this whole podcast is kind of a side gig for us. And it's been a bit of a balancing act, how we managed with help training as well as continue with the agency. And we just, the more we think about this, the more value we see in this, because we're fighting through these situations on a daily basis. And this influences what we talk about, the material that we build. And we thought, well, hey, let's just start talking about what we're doing, how the fights that we're having with this code. And because ultimately, I really genuinely believe e-commerce developers are heroes.
Absolutely.
You, as you're listening to this, are your hero. If you're an e-commerce developer, you're keeping putting food on the table for a merchant. You're keeping the lights on. And there's a lot that depends on you. The pressure's high. The stakes are even higher. And so,
yeah, and sometimes you can be starting to feel burned out, or like, boy, I've been working on this project for 4 hours or 8 hours or 4 days. And you're like, where's the light in the end of the tunnel? Of course, then it comes and you actually get it solved, and then it feels really good. But that can be frustrating to be working through that. And the thing is, you're not the only one that's working through those sorts of challenges where you're like, oh man, how do I solve this? But it's like, that's the kind of stuff that we do too. And it's like other people, developers might just be more used to those sorts of feelings and those sorts of challenges and frustrations and fights.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. You're not alone. So we are here to share our stories with you, and hopefully they'll be an inspiration to you. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to solve problems quickly. Because unless you're working for a really unique agency, almost every agency charges based off the hour in one form or another. I mean, yes, there's value-based billing and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, retainers, it all boils down to per hour, and merchants don't like it, understandably, if you spend 8 hours fixing a problem that they think should never have been a problem in the first place. And it comes down to how fast can you fix the problem.
That's right. That's right.
So, and that ultimately increases the stress for us as developers, because the merchant's beating on the door saying, hey, solve this problem fast. We're losing sales as a result, and it's costing us money because you're taking the time on it, taking so much time on it. And yeah, anyways.
Which is the other type of problem there too, right? Sometimes you've got a situation where the site is down, or the checkout is down, or something like that. So then time is really of the essence. We're not just talking about somebody's paychecks. We're talking about cash flow into our client that has been affected by this bug or outage or whatever it is. And now we've got to fix it. Time is critical here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you talk about pressure and stress and not fun. And so we want to discuss this toolbox of options that are available to you, to us as developers, to where we can know which tool to grab in which situation and how to work through those things in order to solve things quickly.
Absolutely. Definitely. What we thought we'd do is we're going to just share stories of the challenges that we faced and how we worked through it. Obviously, the challenge, I think, itself matters less. That doesn't matter as much as like how we fixed it and some of the things that we came across, our findings and our learnings in the process. So, Jesse, you had something queued up that you had to deal with this last week, and why don't you share? Go ahead and share.
Yeah, it was a fun one. It was interesting because it was one of those things where the PR is like one line long. And so the fix to this is like a single thing. So what happened was I was working on something, and someone else had been working on it earlier and had introduced a new feature, and there was a problem with it. So I go in and I'm like,
there's a problem with the new feature somebody introduced.
Yes, there was a problem. And
come on.
I know. It would be great if we could write perfect code, but in this case,
testing comes in.
Yes.
That is where integration testing or functional testing. But sorry.
Yes, that's a great thing to plug right now too. Write those tests and find it earlier on.
I know we all hate writing tests, but
yeah, and taking them too. So I was looking at the problem and reading.
Did you just say taking test?
Yes.
Like what kind of test are you talking about? Like
any type of test.
Like certification exam?
Any type of test. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
tough.
you're right.
It takes some brain sweat. It takes some.
It does.
Hard work and some effort to get in there and do that. And
that
a
was
little bit of nerves.
That was quite the jump of topics, though. I'm very impressed. That was incredible. Okay.
What can I say? So, looking at the issue, how do I get in there and fix it? And it's like, this was a small issue. Like, it shouldn't take long. But one of the things that I wanted to do was to take a look at what code had been introduced. And so I was able to locate the pull request with the issue number. And the developer who had worked on this previously had as we normally do, put that issue number in their pull request. So all I had to do is jump into GitLab, type in the pull request, type in the issue number, and there was the pull request ready to go. I took a look, and those files were the ones that I kind of started off in. So instead of having to go look through the code base and see like, okay, which files would apply here, I had a starting point of these were the files that were edited in this pull request. They're probably going to have something to do with the fix.
Yeah.
Now, I also had to jump into the core too. And in that case, opening the console because this is JavaScript. And basically what was wrong was there was a mass action is what it is called in Magento for applying a single action to multiple items in a grid.
Yep.
So you can check multiple different rows in a grid and then click a button and then it does something on the server. And so in this case, there was a list of options, but only the first one was triggered, even if you selected the third one or whatever. And so that was JavaScript core that I was looking at. Like, okay, how does Magento like take and process these options and things like that? And going in, and it ended up to be just one item in a PHP array that was missing. But it was in those files that were edited already. So indeed, the fix involved those files. Those were the ones that I needed to change, even though I had to look at some of the other core files in order to identify that. But that pull request link right there allowed me to, within like 5 minutes or less, locate the files that I was going to change for that fix. It just reminded me of the importance of putting that issue number in the commit because it was so fast to locate those files.
Well, the nice thing is, at least in GitLab, I can't remember on GitHub, but it then provides a link back to Jira. So you literally, in the title of the pull request or merge request in GitLab terms, you click, use dev 1234, whatever it is, and then you can click on that, takes you back to Jira, right? So,
yes.
And then we don't have it configured, but I think we need to actually get that done.
Yes.
But you can also have Jira link back to GitLab and have all the commits with that issue number in the commit message in there too. So that's really helpful in, again, piecing this type of information together.
Yes. And it's another tool in the toolbox, right? For like locating the code that might be a factor in this. It probably is, just because that was the code that was most recently edited.
Which again, the other thing is the commit messages, and
that's true.
Making sure, because ultimately, if you, which I hope you do, use the nomenclature of issue number and then commit message. You have two parts: the issue number and the commit message. You could do the issue number in an absolute worthless commit message as like a fixed bug.
Yeah, and it's like, that's so helpful. Thanks, man, for including that information.
Yeah,
here. That's great. You fixed the bug.
Yeah, well, you could literally have done without that, because that's kind of what. Well, I guess you could say added new feature. That would be the other alternative.
Equally unhelpful.
Yeah, but yeah, basically it's the time you invest now, or the little bit of thought that you invest now, will save you probably double that if you ever need to touch that in the future. Because the problem that I always face, and it just kills me, it's like, am I just a bad developer? Just because of my memory? Because I write code, and then it seems like 3 months later, not even 3 months sometimes, I get in there, it's like, I know I wrote this, and I usually like most of what I write, but it's like, what? How does this work?
Yeah.
It's incredibly frustrating.
Yes, it can be, but on the other hand, like, we're working on things that are important, and we don't like save those things to our brain memory.
Yeah.
We just like do it and then move on to the next challenge, the next interesting project.
Yeah.
And that's why those commit messages are so important. It's kind of like, well, there's the other thing of when you write just a single commit in a small PR, GitLab pre-populates the pull request title with that commit message. So it's kind of like if you were to take a folder of documents to your manager and say, hey, here's some documents. Like, the manager would rightly ask you, what are these for?
Yeah.
And so the commit message serves multiple different purposes there. Not only does it help you start your pull request, but it kind of provides that information to whoever's reviewing that pull request. Like, here's what it's for. But it provides that information to your future self, or the future developer, who will then thank you for writing a relevant commit message and say, like, okay, well, this is the change that it makes. This fixes the problem where only the first one was selected. Bingo. Or whatever it is in your case. And just like thinking about it in terms like, how would you describe this to someone else? Like, what does this code change do in a practical layman's sort of terms?
I don't know what you think about this, but I had experimented for a while, and I kind of got out of the habit of, instead of saying about reviewing the tenses of these commit messages. So I would say this now behaves in this certain way, and always making sure the word now was a part of that, and that kind of helped me reframe how I was writing that, and I think it actually made those commit messages more helpful. I don't know. That was just something I'd experimented with for a while, and probably took a long weekend. I forgot about myself doing that or something. That's my memory or something. But
I do think making it present tense is a great way to do it. Describing the code as it is right now, as it is of this commit message, as this change makes it this commit, this small unit of code, I think is relevant.
Yeah, I was just gonna look through a couple of our commit messages here and see. Here was one that I added. Adding fees to order response. So that's fine. But I wonder if I could have written it better and saying order API response now has fees attached. I don't know if that would be. I think adding fees to order response probably is acceptable, right? I mean, or would you?
I would say it's roughly equivalent. You could get I think the second one might be a little bit clearer, but both of those still convey that this is adding something. And I think the thing is, like, adding API to order response. Okay, where's that order response? Is that, in the admin panel, or is that API or something like that?
Yeah.
So that extra API word could actually be useful in there. And the tense still, like, order fees now, or fees now in order API could be relevant as well.
Yeah. Well, and now you bring up a good point. Adding the word API might help if you're searching by commit messages for API references. That could help. So again, this was specifically for the API context. So we could have fairly easily, if I would have added that would have helped the searching capabilities in the future. Let's talk about another thing, another challenge that I had. It was yesterday. Actually, we both started on it because it was enough of a urgent issue for this particular merchant. But products weren't saving, and specifically through the API. The cool thing was I jumped in there, and it was there was an error log. So it was just bam. Like, I saw it. It was so clear, so easy to see. I was like, yes, what an easy solution. And here's the problem. It was a fatal error saying that, and I want to make sure I get the types correct. Integer cannot be cast to string. Type integer cannot be cast to type string. It was in a plugin I had just recently built and deployed. Totally missed that. No, that was actually, I built that a while ago. And somehow this error was starting to creep in. The easy solution, I think, that we would often just think of is, well, just add the typecast. I mean, come on, it's so easy, and be done with it.
Yeah, it's like 5 characters or 6.
Yeah, something like that, exactly. But here was the thing that struck me, and again, this is where thoughtful debugging makes a huge difference. Normally, when we have this type of a error, it's usually because some string cannot be cast to type int, which is exactly the opposite of this error. And usually it's because, at least in the Magento ORM, Object Relationship Manager, where it's pulled information, how Magento loads information from the database, it doesn't do a good job typing scalar values, i.e. converting something to a string or an integer, that sort of thing. We have to kind of do that in our classes if we want correct types. Yep. So the problem is going from a integer to a string with, again, backwards of that. Here's my concern. Again, just adding that might temporarily solve the problem, but this is to rebuild product prices. An update has been made to the system. It's a very complex pricing system, and we need to make sure that the prices get updated as expected on the front end. Otherwise, we are showing customers incorrect pricing. So if we're to look at a product object, what identifier would usually be an integer, or what would be a string? Jesse, pop quiz. What would be usually an integer of the product identifiers versus a string for product identifiers?
Okay, I'm thinking of product ID.
Yeah.
The entity ID in the database is going to be a integer.
Or ding, ding, ding. Yep.
Product SKU is going to lean towards the string side of it.
Yeah. Well, you see, I just put you on a test right there.
There you go.
That was 100%. That was 100%.
All right.
Yeah, good. But anyways, yeah, and that's exactly the point. Like, are we having product IDs passing through this filter as opposed to strictly SKUs? We were not expecting SKUs. And that's a whole conversation for another time. What should we use, product IDs or SKUs for passing information around the Magento system, or at least saving into the database? But I investigated that, and turns out I was grateful that, by investigating it, it meant that I couldn't just look at the log, slap a quick type conversion on there, and be done with it. No, I had to replicate this. So I had to go find rebuild this API reference. I had to set it up in Postman. I had to trigger the request, make sure my breakpoint was set into Xdebug. We're talking about, 3-minute fix versus I'm guessing it took closer to 15 to 20 minutes, probably 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah. Make sure everything else was in place so I get this local replication. And it took a lot more time. But the result was I found the answer to my problem. I knew without the shadow of any doubt that we were now passing in product SKUs, but I learned, I don't think I'd ever fully known this, that if a set of characters is fully numeric, PHP will convert that to an integer for array keys. So
super interesting.
Yeah, I found, and I made some other tweaks while I was in there to improve the stability of that, but I was very happy that I did that, because taking that extra, 30 minutes all said and done, knew that prices were getting updated. Those values are going to be shown on the front end. Otherwise, I guarantee you it would come up as a problem in the future. Hey, why is this not being updated? By us taking the time now, we saved a lot of time and ultimately merchant frustration. Yeah. Like, they hate it, and understandably so. They hate it when stuff breaks over and over and over again, and it kills me whenever that happens for us.
Yeah, and what I love about that story is that you took the time to step back and evaluate it. I think my tendency is to look at the problem and be like, oh, okay, here's a theory for what's going wrong, or here's something that I think is the problem, so we're going to put this Band-Aid on it.
Yep.
and go with it. And yet that stepping back and reevaluating the whole situation from the end user's perspective can be so valuable.
Yep.
Because it can be so easy to miss problems as they come when we just put a Band-Aid on it, because we're just looking at that little bit of code.
Yeah.
And we aren't considering all the ramifications of other places that use that code or things like that. Instead, we're taking a step back and being like, okay, what does the end user see and how can we fix this correctly?
And we'll be talking about here in the future the whole TAD debugging framework. I'm actually writing an article about it right now. And it's obviously part of our upcoming book release, The Art of eCommerce Debugging. And TAD, I'll just quickly say the acronym. It is an acronym for, first one is take an inventory, evaluate the situation. Number 2 is attempt a fix, try to solve this problem. And then number 3 is probably one of the most important, is do it again. This is a cycle. This is repeated. Time caps are very important. And I go into great detail and a lot of examples in The Art of eCommerce Debugging. But again, that's where this is very important, because the first go around we do to solve a problem is likely not going to be the best go around. It's not going to be our best solution. It's usually at least round number 2 that we start approaching, or we achieve that really good solution. I just see that over and over again.
And in this case, that take an inventory was looking at that log file.
Yeah.
And then assessing it was adding that string cast to get the problem fixed in the now. And then you took that step back and were like, okay, we're going to reassess.
Yep.
And you evaluated the rest of that process and what other fixes would be necessary or good to make a good solution. And in that case, the Band-Aid was great because it got we could hotfix that. I mean, we could get the product save back up and running, which is what they wanted.
Yeah.
But then we could go back and do like a make sure that was something that was going to be good, or change it, or do whatever is necessary for a really good long-term fix.
Absolutely. It was really, it's always, that's the nice thing about me being a back-end developer. You're a front-end developer. So if I need to, and we don't have any sites hosted on Adobe Commerce Cloud at this moment, so we don't have to worry about the whole immutable file systems. But you kind of have to deal with that anyways with what you do on the front end, because right? I mean,
yes.
There is no way you can hotfix in a string cast in React.
That's for sure. Yep, you rebuild it and ship it. But even that it can be equivalent of a hotfix. Even if you do ship out a new build, you could ship out a build with just that little fix in there.
Yeah.
And everything like that. So it does take longer time. And everything like that.
It's more time to do. So it's not like a 5-minute or less fix. You're looking at, maybe up to 15, 30 minutes somewhere in there to get that out the door. Yeah. That's great. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. It's been great having Jesse as kind of his first being part of this Smash the Bug episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button or that subscribe button, because we'd hate for you to miss out on future content like this. If you enjoyed it, and I genuinely hope you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review, drop us a comment. That's great. If you did not enjoy us, please do neither of the two. We would appreciate that too. I'm just kidding. But either way, you'll find us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Stitcher and all these other places as well. So anyways, we are grateful for you taking the time to listen, hang out here with us for just a little bit, and we look forward to bringing you the next episode here shortly.